Did you know that in the 1970s, the industry that defined Switzerland practically ceased to exist? In just a few short years, thousands of people lost their jobs, villages in Switzerland became deserted, and century-old brands simply went bankrupt. In today's video, we're going to talk about the quartz crisis. Greetings and complications, dear friends. I'm Leandro Amorim and you're watching GMT-3, the channel that makes complications simple, always giving you a warm welcome and also inviting you to join our channel if you haven't already. So like this video, leave a comment and also subscribe. And if you want to take it a step further, you can join our VIP club, become a member and help me out with my content production. Of course, I thank you immensely for that, and I also thank you by giving you access to an exclusive WhatsApp group, exclusive coupons with our partners, and prize giveaways. Come be a part of this club. I'm sure you're really going to enjoy it. In today's video, like I said, we're going to talk about the quartz crisis and how it happened. Of course, the term quartz crisis, is only used by those who got screwed by it. This term is used in Switzerland. The rest of the world refers to this moment in history as the Quartz Revolution. And yes, it was a huge revolution. Practically, in just a few years, a technology made watches far more accurate and infinitely cheaper. This made Switzerland have to reinvent itself, rise from the ashes, practically like a phoenix, to stay active and alive in the market. And in today's video, we're going to talk about that. If you want a luxury watch today, the quartz crisis during that period has a lot to do with it, since the industry had to change the way it viewed watches. Up until the 1970s and 1980s, the main feature that was celebrated in watches was their accuracy, and I'm referring to mechanical watches. There were observatory awards that were given to certain movements, but from the 1980s onward, in order to survive, Switzerland had to change that focus. That's when they started investing in that idea of desirability. Watches were no longer about being precise, but about making you belong to a certain social circle. That happened because of the quartz crisis, and Switzerland had to do that to stay alive. But just to give a little context, what is a quartz watch and when was it created? The quartz wristwatch was created at the end of the 1960s, but this technology is much older. Decades ago, back in the 1920s, engineers, a group of engineers from the Bell Telephone Company in the United States, developed the first quartz clock in 1927. It was a gigantic contraption, but anyway, it used quartz technology in their clocks. But what is this quartz technology? Why did it do all this? Why is it so much cheaper? Quartz, the mineral quartz, has a characteristic. It is piezoelectric, meaning if you take a quartz crystal and apply an electric charge to it, it vibrates, it resonates. And the idea of these engineers was, we're going to take a quartz crystal, we're going to apply an electric charge to it, it's going to start vibrating, and we're going to count these vibrations. When these vibrations reach a certain number or frequency, we'll know that a second has passed. So, my dear friend, your watch. Your quartz watch has a small quartz crystal in the shape of a tuning fork, and an electric charge is applied to this tuning fork. And when it vibrates, 32,768 times, or 1 Hertz a second, has passed. This is the main characteristic of quartz watches. This type of technology started to be developed back in the 60s, and in the 70s the price dropped drastically. The global watchmaking race for quartz technology started back in the early 60s. There was a Swiss electronics center, a watchmaking electronics center, which started in 1961 in Switzerland. They started developing, more than 20 companies began developing quartz technology for their watches there. But the Swiss industry, even today, is very conservative, so they didn't pay attention as quickly as they should have. Seiko, on the other hand, in Japan, dove in completely in 1969, which was the Seiko Astron, and the Swiss industry was still struggling. They started developing the Beta 1 movements, which came out in 1967, okay? That was the first movement that this watch electronics center created. Just so you know, it was a movement where everything was still soldered by hand, right? But it was the first movement from that consortium, that group, in 1967. In 1971, they created the Beta 21, which was much more marketable. But the one who got there first was Seiko with the Astron. It was the movement, I think C35, I think it was C35. But this movement lacked so much reliability that Seiko produced it, put it on the market and said, look, we're selling it, we got here before everyone else. The date they chose was a very relevant date for the Western calendar, right? Since the Japanese hardly celebrated Christmas at that time, and even today I think it's more of a Western tradition to celebrate December 25th. But they released it on December 25th, 1969. That already shows, right, their intention to really win over the Western market. But the movement wasn't very precise. They released, I don't remember the exact number of Astrons they made. If I say it, it would just be a guess. But the movement was still expensive. This C35 still needed improvements. So they stopped production and only brought the Astron back in 1972. But they were the first. They arrived and said, look, we're here. They were selling the Seiko Astron, the first quartz watch ever sold in the world. And then this whole race began. Two hemispheres. Japan was very strong in the quartz race and Seiko won by a landslide. Just so you have an idea, in 1977, Seiko was the company with the highest revenue in the world. To give you an idea, Seiko in '77 was like Apple is today. And the Americans also started producing their quartz watches with the technology. Look how interesting that is. The American space program made them so good at microelectronics that it was a natural step for them to move into quartz watches. And Hamilton launched the Pulsar, which was their first quartz watch in the United States. The watch was a tremendous success. It was fashionable to wear the Pulsar, so much so that James Bond wears this watch. The Shah of Iran as well. There's a photo of him wearing this Pulsar. Celebrities used it. It was the fashionable watch. Back in 1972, wearing the Hamilton Pulsar. Just making a side note, okay? This technology of using electricity is a bit older, okay? There's Bulova's Accutron. We even have, I think it was Hamilton that had the H500. These are watches from the 1950s, but they were hybrids, right? They were electric watches that made mechanical parts move. I'm just making this side note. End of side note. Let's continue. I'm coordinating everything in my head. And as soon as it hit the market, it was an extremely expensive watch. Just so you have an idea, the Astron, when it came out in 1969, cost 450,000 yen. I did some research, right? To see how much that would be worth today. In reais, that would be around 55,000 reais. Of course, that's a lot of money to spend on a watch in 1969. But the technology dropped in price substantially in a very short period of time. In 1969, in 1977 as well, Seiko sold 18 million watches. So yeah, the price dropped a lot. Quartz technology in analog watches moved on to LED watches, right? Like the Hamilton Pulsar. And then it went to LCD technology. Then Seiko and Casio kind of in the background benefited as well. This technology is what made them what they are today. The price of all this technology plummeted. It was the decline of the Swiss industry. Then, as I said at the beginning of the video, 2/3 of the people who worked with watches there in Switzerland lost their jobs. I think from more than 90,000 it dropped to 28,000. From 1,600 brands it dropped to less than 600. Countless Swiss brands simply ceased to exist or had to merge to keep surviving. That's what happened. The decline was so severe, these companies owed so much to the banks, that the banks came to them and said, look, now you need to unite in order to keep existing, otherwise we're in trouble. That consortium there to develop the Beta 1 and later the Beta 21 took too long to deliver the expected results. And Seiko had a field day in the 70s and 80s to save the Swiss industry. A key figure comes in. A guy named Nicholas Hayek. He is celebrated to this day in Switzerland as the man who simply managed to keep the industry alive. Everything was going terribly. Everyone was running around the offices throwing papers in the air. It was chaos, chaos, chaos. Then this guy comes in. These watchmaking industries owed the banks a lot of money. It was a lot of Swiss francs they owed to the banks. So the banks went to Nicholas and said, man, you need to fix this situation for us. We're going to go under. If the Swiss watchmaking industry goes under, we go under too. So Nicholas Hayek ended up being a consultant for two big groups, ASUG and SIH. They were two big watchmaking groups. Nicholas Hayek took over this union, this merger of these two groups, and it ended up becoming the Swatch Group, SWAT, which we still have to this day. But this Lebanese man, Nicholas Hayek, he came in and simply remodeled the whole industry. That's when SWAT was born, which is considered today as the watch that simply saved the Swiss industry, launched there, I think, in 1983. There were 16 models, and in 2 years, SWAT sold 2.5 million watches. In 2 years, they sold 2.5 million watches. Let me make a parenthesis here so you can get an idea of the reach that watchmaking has today. SWAT, when they launched the Moon SWAT, sold 100 million units in a year. So, the arrival of this guy was simply what saved the Swiss industry. It was like, if you can't beat them, join them. They launched the production of their plastic watches, and then the industry started to breathe a little more. They all grouped together, launched this watch. It sold like crazy, and that gave them a bit of breathing room. When Hayek came in, a change of mindset started in the watch industry, like I said at the beginning of the video. That perception of making watches that were just precise changed a little, and now we started making watches that were desirable. Precision was no longer the main selling point, but rather the desire to belong to a certain social class. The ones who really took advantage of this were Patek Philippe, Audemars Piguet, Vacheron, and even Rolex. So that's when marketing studios started to get involved to develop marketing ideas for the watches. Nicholas Hayek himself, when he launched Swatch, invited a guy who was really strong in the marketing field. He had huge expertise, but in the production of other things, since watches weren't the main focus. I can't recall his name, but he handled Colgate's marketing. And anyway, he started doing the marketing for the watches. And that's how the idea was born of making something desirable and not just something precise. Since the Quartz watches put the precision of mechanical watches to shame. Quartz watches today are extremely precise. And then the industry had to adapt to that. This whole timeline that I tried to bring to you gives a bit of an idea of what the quartz crisis was. I hope I was concise with my words. There are people who talk about this with a lot of authority, like Flavio from Mechanical Watches, for example. There are essays on their forum that talk about the quartz crisis in an amazing way. This was just a video. So I really hope this helped you get an idea of what the quartz revolution was like for other countries. Anyway, it was an industry that was used to something that, well, up until then was working, so they didn't want to change anything. They just left an office developing something that was only presented when Seiko said, hey, I got here first, here's the Astrum, and the rest is history. Seiko has been way ahead up to this day, right? We have the Japanese watchmaking industry with a strong focus on the production of quartz watches, exactly because they've been developing this technology since the 1970s. The American industry was way ahead at the beginning of the 1970s. Later, the Japanese managed to greatly reduce production costs. The Americans couldn't keep up, and then many companies ended up closing down. Only the Japanese stayed at the forefront of this technology. I really hope you enjoyed this video, this timeline about the quartz revolution or the quartz crisis. If you're Swiss or work for a Swiss brand, I hope this helped you understand a bit more about how the decline of the Swiss industry happened. Was it due to this ostracism of developing an idea, of designing something that was tangible and reached the market in a timely manner? The Japanese got ahead in that race. I really hope you enjoyed this video, Quartz Crisis. Subscribe to our channel Brazil Watch Show. On August 20th, 21st and 22nd, you'll have a huge selection of watches there, including this Technos I'm wearing. I'm loving using this diver, and the watch is really cool. May God bless you always more and more, and of course we'll see you again very soon in our next video. Bye bye.